Hey, it's Martina here. Welcome to this video about Bloom Beyond, Martine Sorthe, which is myself, perfectionism, and the subconscious mind. Since you found your way here, I bet you're a high performer with perfectionism. This perfectionism typically manifests in one of two ways. You're either hustling or you're procrastinating. You could also swing from side to side between the two. We call it the perfectionism pendulum. So basically it looks like this, and wherever you are, you're definitely not likely to be hanging out much in the middle. The reason why this is happening is not what you think it is. It's because your subconscious mind is wired for it. It's what you're familiar with, and it's what you feel worthy of. So ask yourself, where are you on this perfectionism pendulum right now? And what is the cost of it really? How is your life and business impacted by your perfectionism tendencies? Have a think about that for a moment. Because here's the thing. Perfectionism makes you take things too far. You either stress yourself into burnout with hustling or fall into procrastination on the other side. The pendulum is swinging, and it will keep swinging until your subconscious mind is rewired for balance. This is a huge problem for high performers like you for several reasons. It robs you of a tremendous amount of energy, momentum, and fulfillment. Your contribution takes a lot longer to research, create, and launch. And your blooming gets pushed way back, if it even happens, because others might jump the gun and get in front of you on great opportunities. So, do you see how this is a big problem? Personally, I know what it's like. To be brief, here's the simplest way I can describe it. Perfectionism is a soul sucker, isn't it? Brené Brown, she's got this quote where she says, "Perfectionism is the 20-ton shield we lug around, hoping it protects us from experiencing judgment, shame, and blame, when all it really does is keep us from being seen. And it's heavy as F." So the paradox is that you could be either hustling or procrastinating. And both would be perfectionism in disguise. Both would be a way of armoring yourself up and subconsciously protecting yourself from feelings of unworthiness. You could be grinding your ass off, checking all the boxes and doing what you believe you should. Or you could be waiting around for the perfect moment, overconsume information to know it all, or compare yourself to others. In both cases, you'd be blocking yourself off from embodying your most bright, brave, and balanced self. With perfectionism, you're basically trying to fool the world into believing something about you that you currently don't yet believe about yourself. Let me repeat that one more time. With perfectionism, you're basically trying to fool the world into believing something about you that you currently don't yet believe about yourself. There's a cognitive dissonance between how you present yourself and the way you really feel like an imposter of some sort. Brené Brown also has this quote where she says, "Perfectionism is not the same thing as striving to be your best. Perfectionism is the belief that if we live perfect, look perfect, and act perfect, we can minimize or avoid the pain of blame, judgment, and shame." In a way, perfectionism makes you run on a hamster wheel day in and day out, hoping that tomorrow will be the day you make the exit, right? But of course, that doesn't happen, does it? Thus, you go on and on and on without even getting somewhere. Even if you do get somewhere, that target moves as you move towards it. It's extremely frustrating, exhausting, and draining, isn't it? If you think it is, you've probably been divinely guided here for a change. You see, I've been able to create a life and business of freedom from perfectionism with the power of the subconscious mind and helped plenty of high performers do the same. Everything is better over here beyond perfectionism. That's why I've dedicated my life to lead you on the same journey, minus the years of pushing, proving, and pleasing. Let's now cover what would be good to know about Bloom Beyond. Bloom Beyond helps high performers create a life and business of freedom from perfectionism with the power of the subconscious mind. We believe in being bright, brave, and balanced. We have had enough of pushing, proving, and pleasing. Our mission is to shift the world paradigm from I must earn my worthiness to I am worthy. All of this so we can create and contribute from that worthy place within, so that we can shine bright and empower others to do the same. How do we do that? We use this Bloom Beyond model. So this is what it looks like, and here's how it works. The Bloom Beyond WhatsApp group and garden, which is a free tribe, is by application or invite only. This group has a 256 members limit, and thus we make sure that those entering are both curious and serious about overcoming perfectionism. To give the best service and support we can to existing members, we run cohorts and add new members in batches. Thus, when you apply, please know that a waiting time is expected. And if you're selected, you will be added to a waiting list. And then you will be contacted once it's your turn to join. If you do get selected to get access to this free Bloom Beyond WhatsApp group, you will get access to the garden as well, where I basically plant seeds, which is content that helps you better understand what perfectionism is and what the subconscious mind is, and how we basically could then help you, with being able to create a life and business of freedom from perfectionism with the power of the subconscious mind. So as you probably already understand, this is not some normal, free group. It's a very creative one, and it's also one with exclusive space to it. So, yes, it is free, yet it is only by application and invite only that you could get access to it, right? And also keep in mind that, the value that you get in here is actually better than what most paid programs offer. So what's so special about this free tribe is also that it consists of both free guests, which we call sunflowers, and paid clients, which we refer to as bloomers. And in this way, the sunflowers, right, can actually then be inspired by and learn from not only me, but from the bloomers who have gone through the paid programs and also other bloomers that are in the journey of basically blooming beyond perfectionism or even being part of the Bloom Beyond Mastermind, right? So this creates an outstanding opportunity for everyone to learn and grow and feel supported in the journey to overcome perfectionism. From the free tribe, right, you have two possibilities. You could go back to the way your life and business was before you entered and try to figure it out all on your own, or you could invest into yourself and your growth through any of the paid programs, including Bloom Beyond Perfectionism and Bloom Beyond Mastermind. Bloom Beyond Perfectionism is a systematized program that basically supports high performers in creating a life and business of freedom from perfectionism with the power of the subconscious mind. And it basically invites you to grow through the seasons of wilt, fall, root, rise, and bloom. This is truly a journey, and it is the signature program that we offer. Furthermore, we have the Bloom Beyond Mastermind, which is a high-level program for high performers who would like to basically contribute beyond perfectionism. And this is the real deal. It's a more personalized experience with one-on-one coaching, group coaching, retreats, the Bloom Beyond Perfectionism program included, and so much more. Both of the paid programs basically have a 1-year enrollment. And to invest and apply to any of these programs, you must be a Bloom Beyond WhatsApp group and garden member. You must be a sunflower, right? And you will learn so much more about these programs and what we offer once you actually get into our exclusive tribe. And once within the free tribe, you've got a cohort to decide what you would like to do. If you make the choice to go back to the way your life and business was before you entered the group, that's okay, right? Then we obviously allow your space to be filled by someone else who is ready to go all in on this growth opportunity. If you make the choice to invest into either of our paid programs, you would get ongoing access to the Bloom Beyond WhatsApp group and garden for support. So to apply to the Bloom Beyond WhatsApp group and garden, you would want to click Bloom Beyond WhatsApp group and garden in the menu on this website and then go from there. If your application shows you're curious and serious about overcoming perfectionism, you will get added to the waiting list and hear from us when it's your turn to join. Furthermore, we use this Bloom Beyond system. So it basically looks like this. And so the Bloom Beyond system is that which tells you what we believe in and how we work with you to create growth in your life and business. Think of it like this. A sunflower is part of a system, right? It's got soil, roots, a stem, and a flower with petals on it. And the Bloom Beyond system is made the same way. The idea is that all growth is grounded in the soil of your subconscious mind, meaning your growth depends on the foundation of that in which you have sowed into the garden of your mind, which is your subconscious. We also believe that all meaningful growth roots through spirituality, science, and sustainability. It's not either or. They all work together to help you grow. Those roots have in common and come together to form a stem, which is that of holistic neuroplasticity. This suggests that you're a whole being with a brain that is capable of changing. You're not a fixed entity. You're a flexible sunflower with a desire to shine your light. All of the modalities in which we use to help you grow are symbolized by the petals on the flower itself. When these modalities come together, they form the Bloom Beyond method. So we use this Bloom Beyond method. This is what it looks like, right? Just like any sunflower, this Bloom Beyond method will grow and evolve. But for now, the modalities we use to help high performers create a life and business of freedom from perfectionism is neuro-linguistic programming, rapid transformational therapy, life coaching, astrology, herbalism, creativity, and yoga. All of these modalities work with the subconscious mind. They involve both spirituality, science, and sustainability, and they all believe in holistic neuroplasticity. So this is the Bloom Beyond method in which we use to help you grow. So that is the Bloom Beyond model, Bloom Beyond system, and Bloom Beyond method. And here you can see an overview of it all, so you can see how it's all connected. The members who take part in this are called sunflowers and bloomers. Now, what do the sunflowers and bloomers have in common? They have the desire to overcome perfectionism. They have an open mind and eager curiosity. They ask questions and are willing to grow. They support each other and root for one another. They are highly vibrant from the inside out. Let's first cover the sunflowers. So sunflowers are the free guests of the Bloom Beyond WhatsApp group and garden. And so as a sunflower, you show up as someone who is shining, uplifting, natural, free, living, open, worthy, empowered, and rich. So when you are a part of this free tribe, you are not seen as someone who is a high performer with perfectionism. You are instead seen in your highest light, in your highest expression. And so when you then embody these qualities, you actually activate them within you. Because that in which you speak of, that in which you say about yourself, that is what you become. That is how you basically sow seeds into your subconscious. And that is what gets projected onto the screen of space, in which you call reality. Furthermore, we have the bloomers. So bloomers are the paid clients of the Bloom Beyond WhatsApp group and garden. And as a bloomer, you are brave, liberated, overflowing, original, magnetic, enough, and radiant. So when you then show up as someone who is a bloomer, you activate these qualities too within you, in addition to the already existing qualities of that of the sunflower. Here's what they say. They say, "Dear Martina, now that I have allowed myself to let go of the immense stress more and more and find my way back to my inner self, I also notice how all the seeds we have planted in the last weeks are gradually blooming. I feel so wonderful and don't know how to thank you for that. I notice how all the work is now settling inside of me." Just thank you, Martina. Today really showed me that the work was effective and that you being my coach is making my year. I can feel great things coming, and I'm so happy I decided to work with you. All the thanks, love, and appreciation belongs to you, my friend. You truly have a natural gift with reaching out and guiding people to bloom and grow to a higher level of themselves. You and your program are a blessing, and I honestly feel blessed to have had the opportunity to grow alongside your guidance. It feels so great to be open and talk about my emotions and feelings. Thank you, Martina, for helping and guiding me. I don't think I would have handled it as well if you had not been there with me. A couple of friends said to me that it shows maturity and courage to do what I did. I'm not so sure about that right now, but just so freaking happy I decided that for myself. Life is so much simpler now that I don't invest my energy in distraction qualities. I have you and the Bloom Beyond Perfectionism course to thank you for providing a platform for me to grow from. My words are well and truly deserved 100 times over, Martina. Yes, I can barely believe. I feel fine. Thanks for guiding me there. I'm so close to trying or crying, I guess. Happy tears right now, just as I'm so relieved I am at this point. I can't thank you enough for opening my eyes to how wonderful life can be with clear vision and an open heart, Martina. My relationship to myself, my everyday life, my projects, studying, and the people around me is blooming. I am finally back in the flow, and I have so much clarity in my head that I haven't had for months, and everything is much easier for me. It was just the best decision for 2019 to work with you, and I feel that great things are coming. I'm starting to feel the ascent from the ashes of weeding. I'm beginning to understand why my intuition led me to your work. My life is opening up and I'm feeling emotional and slightly tearful. You and I have changed the course of my life. Here's one out of many transformations. So, this creative girl right here discovered me and Bloom Beyond online, where I described what a perfectionist is. And she was left speechless because I managed to describe her and her everyday life. And so before starting to work with Bloom Beyond, she typically procrastinated a lot and she avoided tasks because they kind of brought out stressful elements in her. She knew that she had a lack of self-esteem and she didn't want anyone to see her true self kind of failing or even succeeding. For example, she felt the need to kind of dress up and act in a certain way that she really wasn't. That really affected her relationships too. Furthermore, she was an overachiever, right? A high performer who wanted to do everything at the same time, and she wanted it now. Therefore, she missed the present moment. She wanted to utilize the healthy sides of her perfectionism, be truly kind to herself, and let down her guards and kind of be open to, failure and thus feedback, as well as success on her own terms. Therefore, she basically then joined and she kind of then got, help through our paid programs and everything. And in her own words, she never looked back. Now she sees herself and her being in a whole new way. She sees her potential where she didn't see it before. She now is feeling like her true self because she made her, passions into her profession. She picked up painting again. She took her yoga interest to the next level by becoming a yoga teacher. And she's now basically teaching people in her village and tribe. And she started writing, expressing herself, and raising her voice. And guess what? During her yoga teacher training, she decided to tattoo a sunflower on her back as a symbol of how she will always choose to bloom beyond perfectionism. If you don't believe me, check this out for yourself.
I really, really resonated with the human sunflower metaphor that she uses in her program. And when I went to my yoga teacher training in Aruba this summer, we got sorted into these small groups that we were going to have our exams together, and we had to decide a name. And I told about my experiences through coaching, and I told about the Rupi Kaur poem and the human sunflower metaphor and all of that. And they all were like, we should call ourselves that. And we did. And our graduating class, the human sunflowers, we had a class based on the phases of rooting, wilting, falling, blooming. And it was really beautiful. Right after my graduation class, I went and got my tattoo. It's a sunflower. I've always loved sunflowers, and now I just really had a reason to do it because it means so much to me.
So now we've covered Bloom Beyond and what we do and everything, and now let's chat about Martine Sorthe, which is myself, right? So that we can better get to know one another and so that you can see whether you would resonate with me or not as a coach and a light worker. So firstly, you might be wondering, right, if I have experience with perfectionism myself and whether I'm qualified to help others overcome it too. And I can tell you that I have. So I'll give you a brief insight into my journey, but more importantly, I will tell you what principles I live by now in this life beyond perfectionism, where I've run a business beyond perfectionism too, and where I get to be where I want, whenever I want, with whomever I want. So the full story is going to be covered in the garden and also in my Bloom Beyond paid program. So what's my story then? How, where, why, and most importantly, when did my high performance kind of lead me down the path of perfectionism? And how, where, why, and when did I overcome my tendencies through utilizing the principles of my subconscious mind in order to create a life and business of freedom? I'll give you a brief insight into that right now. So what's my story? I've had 3 big realizations in my life. Your mind does exactly what it thinks you want it to do. All beliefs, behaviors, and habits start at the subconscious level, including perfectionism. Perfectionism is blocking our infinite creative potential. Now, I didn't realize all of this in one day. It took me years. But if I stop for a second and years, months, days just peel off me and I become smaller, lighter, shorter, at some point in my journey, a seed was sowed in my mind, a destructive seed that grew into a garden of weeds. Do you know what seed it was? I am not worthy. And as that seed rooted in my subconscious mind, it grew into one weed that infected the whole mind, the whole garden. In fact, it grew so much that other seeds kept joining it. The seed next to it rooted shortly after. I have to prove my worth. And here they came, one by one. I should, I have to, I can't. It was never-ending weeds in my mind. And the worst thing was, I wasn't even conscious of it. And before I knew of it, I had identified the weeds for the beautiful flowers that were there in the beginning. First, the weeds became me. Then, I became the weeds. Perfectionism had me by its grip. Or was I the one who had perfectionism by my grip? Was I the one who had accepted the idea that I was not worthy? Was I the one who had accepted the idea that I had to prove my worth? Was I the one who had accepted the idea that I should, have to, and can't do things? Yes, it was me. It was me all the time. It was my subconscious mind. It was my subconscious mind that accepted the idea, the seed, as truth and projected it onto reality. Because the subconscious mind takes everything personal. Because the subconscious mind doesn't question anything, true or false. It doesn't care. The subconscious mind accepts everything. The subconscious mind accepts whatever it is told. That's how I became a perfectionist. That's how I started intertwining perfectionism with my sense of self. I didn't know who I was without it. That's how I started proving my worth to myself and others. Because at a subconscious level, in my mind, I didn't believe I was worthy. And so I kept pushing, proving, and pleasing. I kept doing what I should do and what I have to do. And whenever I thought about what I really wanted to do, I kept telling myself, I can't do that. And even if I sometimes believed I could do it, some magical force always pulled me back into perfectionism. It pulled me away from what I've always been at my core. Worthy. It was the weeds in my subconscious mind that did that. Seeds that I didn't even plant. Someone else did. But I didn't realize I was the one responsible for removing them. I didn't realize I was the one responsible for sowing new seeds. I didn't realize I was the one responsible for mending the garden of my mind. And I didn't realize this until one day. This was basically the day everything shifted for me. And in what way, you might be wondering? Well, it was the graduation in high school. And it was right there that I realized that I had been pushing, proving, and pleasing my entire life, only to be left feeling empty when the reward was right there in my hands. There I was, receiving the certificate of completion. Not only had I completed, I had top grades, and I was the top student. I was exactly what I thought I ever wanted to be. I had gotten exactly what I ever thought I wanted to have. I had done exactly what I thought I should have done. And there I was, feeling empty. It felt ironic. There I was, staring down at my certificate. I had the physical proof that I had worked hard. I had the physical proof that I could do things. I had the physical proof that I was worthy. And there I was, with kind of a forced, fake smile, with no real friends, no connection with my true self, and just feeling completely empty inside. I was literally numb. I felt ashamed for achieving everything, but feeling nothing. I felt guilt for deceiving my true creative self. I felt exhausted by the thought of spending one more day of my life on this planet in this fixed, busy, grinding state. I right then and there decided to reclaim my childish curiosity and travel the world with no goal whatsoever. Just travel. That summer, I worked in a nursery home, partially to earn money to travel and partially to learn more about humans, because I've always been interested in studying medicine or psychology. Little did I know of who I would meet and how the conversations I had with the elderly in there would actually shift my perspective about what's meaningful in life. I especially remember this one man. He had Parkinson's disease. Just imagine right now having a disease where you get a mask-like face, your hands start shaking, your posture gets insatiable, you've got shuffling steps, your leg starts freezing, you get rigid in your whole body, you can't swing your arms properly, your back gets bent, and you're overall very slow. Doesn't sound very pleasant, right? By now you might be like, what has this man with Parkinson's got to do with my perfectionism story? Well, one of the conversations I had with him totally shook my beliefs forever. As I opened the door with his number on it and entered his tiny little room, I expected to see a man with minor Parkinson's symptoms. You know, at least being able to walk a bit. But no. That was not the scene that I saw. He laid in his bed, and there he laid, day in and day out, for the whole summer that I was there. I got really curious about who this man was, as I do with anyone I meet, really. I like to hear their stories. So one day, as I sat next to his bed and I served him dinner because he couldn't feed himself, I started asking him about his life. All I knew was that he had a huge shelf of books about American politics and some history and Shakespeare and everything next to his bed, a TV that he used as a radio, a pair of glasses, and that he had Parkinson's disease. So I said with curiosity, I'd love to get to know you better, right? Where are you from? I said. He said he was from the nearby town. That's awesome. That's where I went to high school, I said. I'm going to travel now this summer, I told him. But in school, I did love reading about America. It seems like you enjoy it too, I said, pointing at the books next to us. And he twisted his neck and he looked over and he said, yes, I do. I wish I could hold the books in my hands, but I can't anymore. That really struck me when he said that, so I responded, I'd love to read for you, but first, let me ask you, what you studied? What did you do when you were younger? Please tell me. I'd love to hear. Well, I studied all my life and I sacrificed everything for my work. I did what my dad told me to do first. I went to school for engineering, which took me many years, and then I did medical school, and then I became a surgeon. I literally didn't know what to say for a second. Here was a man who had studied and worked in two highly qualified fields his whole life. He was both an engineer and a doctor, even a surgeon, and ended up in a bed with Parkinson's disease. And I was the one feeding him. It touched me because I had been going through high school, right? Thinking that I would study medicine. So not only were we connected in that way, we were both interested in, America and everything and had similar intellectual interests, but I wondered what he meant by saying that he sacrificed everything for his work. What do you mean you sacrificed everything for your work? I said. And it was a moment of silence. Well, Martina, I never had friends, a wife, kids, or family. The price for all the years of mindlessly working I have to pay now. Not only am I laying in bed every day unable to move, I don't have anyone to visit me except an old colleague, maybe, that stops by every now and then. And when he does, it's nice, but I still have to be in this room. And we rarely have anything to talk about from my past because I was just working. He had given up his life for perfectionism. And look where he ended up. Disconnected and lonely. The perfectionism manifested his dis-ease. In so many ways, the progression of Parkinson is a great metaphor for what perfectionism does to you. With Parkinson's disease, it says that symptoms start gradually. And the same is the case with perfectionism. Symptoms start gradually. Then they stifle you. They consume you. They become you. It was a conversation with this man that sparked my new worldview. I started questioning everything about life. What am I doing? Who am I doing this for? When did this even begin? I question, why do most of the world population run on a hamster wheel day in and day out? Why do we grow up doing what we actually want, what is unique and what brings us joy, and then seemingly out of nowhere, we're put on a path of doing what everyone else is doing? Why the F is that? Why do we get raised so that we can go to school, just so that we can get some work, just so that we can earn some money, just so that we can get married, just so that we can have kids, just so that we can retire, and then end up disconnected and alone in a nursery home to be left with seemingly nothing and no one? And why is it that even those who do create a life and business for themselves and are supposedly meant to be free still experience perfectionism? Can someone please tell me, when did we decide that this was the way to live? These questions led me on the journey toward a life and business beyond perfectionism. And so I traveled the world. And in doing that, I shredded a big part of my perfectionism. And slowly but surely, the weeds in the garden of my mind disappeared as I rediscovered the seeds that kind of were sowed within me, right? Before I came here. And I reclaimed my values. I reclaimed my interests. I manifested what matters to me. And I felt as though I was rooting, rising, and blooming like a sunflower. For so long, I had tried to control every part of my life to feel worthy, to the point of feeling utterly empty inside. Ironic thing was that I never really was able to feel in control in my life until I actually released the grip of it and went with the flow instead. That's when I started feeling like I was, behind the steering wheel. I knew the direction I was going and I enjoyed the freaking ride without attachment to the end destination or the outcome. That was what traveling really taught me. True control can only be gained through detaching oneself from the outcome. That doesn't mean that one doesn't plan, visualize, or put in the work. It simply means that one releases the pressure and trusts that things will unfold just the way it's meant to unfold. Best way I can really describe it is that you basically have this seed, right? You sow the seed in the soil. You don't have to stand by it and control its growth, do you? That's utterly out of your control. It's beyond your control. You can water it, you can nourish it, you can position it in, a healthy environment, but that's really all that you can do. When I came home from my travels, my heart felt so whole and my mind felt so open that I naturally wanted to contribute. It was as though a light had been sparked within me, and I felt a pull to let this light be shed on others too. During my travels, I had gotten into personal growth and life coaching, but I really didn't know who I would help. I didn't really know the how either. But as I released the need to know, right? The need to know the how and the why actually then came to me. Why not help other high performers overcome exactly what I had overcome? Perfectionism. So I decided I would read all I could on the topic of perfectionism. I went onto Google and I typed in perfectionism. I read newspaper articles about perfectionism. I read blogs about perfectionism. I read books about perfectionism. I watched videos about perfectionism. I even called up psychologists about perfectionism. I was so fascinated by this topic and finding a way to help others overcome it that I even contacted those who commented on blogs themselves and asked them about their current situation and their desired situation beyond perfectionism. I truly became one of those detectives that won't stop until the case is solved. And the thing here too is that I feel that I was just the channel and the vessel to be able to kind of create a solution for high performers who would like to create a life and business of freedom from perfectionism. It was as if kind of a higher power, infinite intelligence, the universe was kind of working through me to guide me to what it is that I needed to know in order to create what I have done. And so I first educated myself on coaching and psychology without going to university or anything like that. But I realized quickly that I need to learn some skills in business and entrepreneurship too. And so I learned a little bit of that. And then I learned everything that you can think of that could be useful to pull together and make a system that someone would, go through and grow through in order to overcome perfectionism. So yeah, I sat on this desk right here in my childhood bedroom in my parents' house, day in and day out. From the outside looking in, I was working just as hard as before because I'm a high performer, but perfectionism wasn't driving me. It was my mission, a calling of some sort. My whole life, I had been driven by measurements or so-called metrics. As I made the Bloom Beyond Perfectionism program, the thought of metrics went out the window. One thing was on my mind: creating a system that any high performer can grow through and overcome perfectionism once and for all. I no longer cared about what anyone thought of my idea. Whether they thought it was bad, fair, good, or excellent went out the window. I no longer cared about whether someone would give me an A, B, C, D, E, F. on this idea. That went out the window too. And I certainly didn't care if this idea would bring me any coins. That would be a bonus for contributing beyond myself, right? All that was on my mind was, how can I create value? And because that was the dominant thought in my mind, of course, it was projected onto reality. And of course, the Bloom Beyond Perfectionism program came to life. The decision I made to bloom beyond perfectionism in my own life led me to shine my light, and that was how I attracted the first high performers to me. And just like that, I was working to help them embody their most bright, brave, and balanced selves. As I continued to contribute, the synchronicities and confirmation, as well as the different signs that I got from the universe, were crazy. During one of the training sessions that I attended to basically get trained in coaching, I lived on top of this cafe. And guess what it was called? Bloomers. I walked past brick walls with sunflowers painted all over them. I received sunflower gifts and cards with sunflowers printed on them too. And so sunflowers were absolutely everywhere. I knew I was heading in my true direction. Now, these two people are not the same. The person that started the Bloom Beyond Perfectionism journey is not the same as who I am now. I've evolved, and the evolution allowed me to really move from pushing, proving, and placing to living a life of growth and freedom. I just feel so much lighter in my whole being now, and so do the others who I've basically helped and those who have walked in my footsteps. I wouldn't have been able to be where I am now if I didn't question, if I didn't question everything, if I didn't question my conditioning, if I didn't question the weeds in my mind. I let go of everything internally and externally that held me back, including all of the shoulds and the have-tos. It all went out the window, and trust me, in came fresh air. I now can create what I want, right? Whenever I want, with whomever I want, because I have realized the power of my subconscious mind, and I know how to utilize it. This is freedom to me. I wouldn't have bloomed beyond perfectionism if I never took any risks. Seriously, I could have gone down the path of depression. I could have gone down the same path as the old man I met in the nursery home. I could have ended up lonely and disconnected too. But I didn't. Why? Because I took a risk and faced the weeds that had rooted in my own mind. I ripped out this weed. I have to prove my worthiness. And I sowed this seed instead. I am worthy already. I ripped out this weed. I should, I have to, I can't. And I sowed this seed instead. I choose, I want, I will. Realize this. The biggest risk is not taking any risk. When you play it safe, you're taking the biggest risk of your life. For me, the risk of losing myself to perfectionism felt far more dangerous than the risk of letting people see the real me. Your time is limited in this body you have now, so don't waste it living someone else's life. You are the gardener of your mind. You get to decide which weeds to rip out and which seeds to sow. You are responsible for watering it and nourishing it. You can trust that the sun and the moon and the universe will take care of the rest. And with commitment and patience, you get to watch the garden grow. I'm going to quote Brene Brown here, which is a world-renowned researcher on shame, vulnerability, and perfectionism. She says, in this world, choosing authenticity and worthiness is an absolute act of resistance. Choosing to live in love with our whole hearts is an act of defiance. You're going to confuse, piss off, and terrify lots of people, including yourself. One minute, you will pray that the transformation stops, and the next minute, you will also pray that it never ends. You'll also wonder how you can feel so brave and so afraid at the same time. At least that's how I feel most of the time. Brave, afraid, and very, very alive. That's how it feels to bloom beyond perfectionism. It's comfortable, to say the least, but it's the only way to claim brightness, bravery, and balance. It's the only way to truly figure out what principles you want to build your life and business upon. And so I thought I would share with you my principles. So these are Martine's principles. So during my, personal growth and once I bloomed beyond perfectionism, I discovered what they were for me. And so I've called them the Bloom Principles, and I wanted to share them with you because these principles influence all that I am and all that I do. So I am brave. I show courage to face fear and vulnerability. I am a leader. I inspire people to set intentions and create their own reality. I am open-minded. I'm receptive to new perspectives and ideas. I'm original. I have an inner source of fresh initiative and incentive capacity. I am magnetic. I have an ability to attract whatever I set my mind to. So whatever I say, do, create, it's all based on my Bloom principles. I'm constantly asking myself, am I in alignment with my Bloom principles now? Am I in alignment with being brave, a leader, open, original, magnetic right now? And that's how I keep blooming. And that's what enables me to hold space for others' growth too. You see, these have always been my principles and they won't ever change because they are truly what I am. I don't have to think about them and they come very naturally to me. So these principles really kind of help me guide my behavior and how I interact with people and how I show up in the world from the moment that I wake up to the moment that I fall asleep. You might be wondering now, what's Martine's qualifications? My question is, does it really matter what qualifications I have or haven't when I've gone the path before you and I've dedicated myself to being a lifelong learner, especially in the field of perfectionism and the subconscious mind? If you ask me where my certifications are found, I'd say this. I believe my certifications are in my spirit. You either resonate with me as your coach or you don't. Most of the sunflowers and bloomers I work with say they felt called to work with me because of my energy. I believe that's what makes me a light worker and a starseed. I came here for this, to be your guide in activating your light. So in today's world, I think we care too much about qualifications to the point where we've lost touch with what really matters, which is purpose and real world experience. Honestly, I'm so much more than my qualifications and my labels. None of that would comprehend the expansiveness of my multidimensionality as a sunflower and bloomer. And I'm one of those who like to know a lot about everything so I can see the world clearer and in a truer way. Now, even though I myself have overcome the need to prove my worth by showing off my certificates and all of that, I do respect that some people want to know if I am qualified to support them. And so I'm certified in a scope of different fields ranging from, spirituality to psychology to coaching, etc. What it all comes down to is that I've always been a visual and creative, always been imaginative, always been a dreamer, always loved systems, and always been really fascinated with living beings and their spirits. The fascination with our ability to grow has always been there, and thus my attention has always been directed towards the connection between the human mind and the human behavior. The interest in the psyche and the connection to the body and spirit expanded as I started traveling the world, thinking outside of the box and interacting with people in a way that I'd never done before. As I got into personal growth and experienced shifts in my own life and business, my interest in the mind and its power grew exponentially. So after attending my first foundational life coaching course at 18 years old and having read plenty of books on personal growth and having started my business helping perfectionists, I decided to enroll in clinical psychology studies. I learned the basics about the human mind, such as personality, developmental, and cognitive psychology, as well as clinical therapy. However, I chose not to continue my studies in university for 3 reasons. First, because traditional education was no longer in alignment with my values of freedom to be where I want, whenever I want, with whomever I want. Second, because I have lost conviction in the efficiency of traditional talk therapy. And third, because I was called to help high performers create a life and business of freedom from perfectionism with the power of the subconscious mind. I realized through doing my own research that lasting change in the human mind happens on a subconscious level. And then the change is projected onto the screen of space, which is what we call our reality, yeah? I decided I wanted to master the subconscious mind, also called the creative storehouse, to help people make changes that are lasting and that are rapid. And therefore, I dedicated a lot of time, effort, and resources into learning how to work with the subconscious according to its principles. I also find it essential to not only work with your mind, but you as a whole, part of this amazing universe, right? This being said, I'm committed to learn, to grow, and to support you. I like to say it this way. I am committed to you, but I'm not committed for you. I'll give you everything I've got. I'll give you the tools, the systems, and the support. But I cannot take responsibility for you. You must want to grow more than I want growth for you. This is your life and business. Now that you know more about both Bloom Beyond and me, let's cover what's good to know about perfectionism. And we're going to start off by chatting about the misconceptions about perfectionists. And whenever I say perfectionists, that refers to high performers with perfectionistic tendencies. And for the sake of simplicity, we're just going to call them perfectionists, all right? Now, if you were to go and ask the general public, the society, and get kind of the opinion on what a perfectionist is and what they do, you would end up with a mixed sort of response. The bias is really towards this. Most people think that perfectionists are perfect. You see, I've actually found that a lot of people have told me, I'm not looking perfect, so I can't be a perfectionist. I'm not behaving perfect, so I can't be a perfectionist. And I've been like, what did you just say? And they say, well, I thought perfectionists were looking and behaving perfect. And this is the main misconception that all the other misconceptions are about. That they think, basically, that you have to be perfect to be a perfectionist. They are kind of bulletproof aliens or something. They kind of think perfectionists have got Harvard MBAs and several businesses. They've got fancy credentials and everything. They've got great connection with their family and friends. They've just got it all together, you know? And the reason why they think that is because culture continues to encourage perfectionism despite all the research that indicates perfectionism is actually associated with increased anxiety, depression, even suicidal behavior, eating disorders, relationship and health problems. Enough said. The perception of what a perfectionist is so ingrained in people that perfectionism has become equal to success. And because the majority of people think perfectionism is something to strive for, perfectionists kind of end up being seen as super secure, self-assured individuals who may be known for, being at the top of the game, even the CEO of a company and everything. And so the worst is that people think that perfectionists never miss a beat, with exceptional performances that make their accomplishments seem natural. So, because people think that perfectionists are perfect, they think perfectionists are overly confident, that their talents kind of come naturally to them, that they are critical of others because their standards are so high, that they are kind of above any criticism, and that their perfectionism ends with success. That's what people think. And so no wonder if you then wear perfectionism as a badge of honor. This has been the public opinion of what a perfectionist is, but it's distorted. This isn't what perfectionism is. This is just everyone's opinion or perceived understanding of what perfectionists actually are. It's actually wrong. So let's look at the actual definition. Well, if you go back and you look at the actual definition of a perfectionist, it kind of looks like this. It says a person who refuses to accept any standard short of perfection. So he doesn't say anything about fancy degrees or certificates or wearing something truly unique or doing it all and being it all or anything like that. It just says refuses to accept any standard short of perfection. That's what the definition is. But the distorted view of it is this thing here, right? Now, simply put, a perfectionist is somebody who refuses to accept any standard short of perfection. So it's really a person who refuses to accept reality as it is. That's really what you could say. That's what perfectionism is all about. Far from a mild personality quirk or the false humility of the high performer, true perfectionism is hellish. Picture the nastiest, cruelest person you know. Now imagine that their full-time job is to follow you around, close as your shadow, constantly criticizing and judging everything you do. All the while holding out the tantalizing promise that all your fears and insecurities will disappear if only you do things just right. Everything other than what is just right, the voice refuses to accept. To the person who's blocked by perfectionism, the incessant voice in their head is as real as the voice of the person across the room. It's a subconscious pattern, hard to change with conscious force. That's what we're talking about here. So let's break this definition down so we can really clearly understand this. A perfectionist is a person who refuses to accept any standard short of perfection. And so person, well, this is you. Refuses to accept, this is what you're doing and how you're thinking. It's pretty simple. You're in a constant state of refusion. Any standard short of perfection, well, this is a level of quality and attainment you're striving for. So you've got three things. You've got a person who refuses to accept any standard short of perfection. And now the person is pretty simple. We can cross that one out, right? That's you. But what does it mean to refuse to accept? And what does it mean to be striving for any standard short of perfection? Let's first tackle this next one here. We figured out person, this is you. And so why do perfectionists refuse to accept? This is really, again, what you're doing and how you're thinking. And so we need to understand why you are refusing to accept before we can determine what you are refusing to accept. Right now, you might be a bit tense and think, well, I'm not refusing to accept anything. Well, let me tell you, you are, right? You could be refusing to accept yourself. It could be something externally, like something you're working on, or another person. There's always something that needs to be fixed, changed, modified, added, purchased, cleaned, made better. There's always something that just isn't, feeling perfect. You don't need to agree with me on this one right now. That's not the point here. The point is for you to really keep an open mind here. So again, we need to understand why you are refusing to accept before we can determine what you're refusing to accept. You've probably not thought about why you're refusing to accept before, right? And so let's start with why you're refusing to accept, because this is going to be a big, big breakthrough moment for a lot of people, including you, because you've probably not thought about why you're refusing to accept before. It took me a really long time to get a thorough understanding of why perfectionists refuse to accept. It's time to start seeing the world and perfectionism the way I see it. It's time to put on what I'm going to call the glasses. And when you put on the glasses, things are clear. I'm going to tell you how I see the world and how I see perfectionism, all right? And then I'm going to invite you to see the same, because when I look outside my window and I look at things are pretty clear to me. I see and I know why high performers with perfectionism are doing things. I know why they get up in the morning. I know why they tend to buy things. I know why they tend to overconsume information. I know why it is that they stay busy and keep hustling. I know why sometimes they tend to fall into procrastination. I know why it is that they feel empty inside. I know why it is that they just can't seem to kind of feel joy to its fullest capacity. I know why it is that they struggle creatively sometimes too. And so there are so many different ways, right, that perfectionism can manifest, but I know exactly why this is because I've gone to the core of it, all right? I know why it all is because they refuse to accept. This is a fundamental understanding which everyone needs to know if you're going to bloom beyond perfectionism. So this is the way I see it. So why do perfectionists think and behave the way they do? Well, they are refusing to accept, right? They refuse to accept, which means they are in denial. You can be in denial about anything that makes you feel vulnerable or threatens your sense of control. And this is the root cause of perfectionism. You're doing anything and everything to not feel vulnerable and not feel out of control. This is the biggest fear of a perfectionist, to feel vulnerable and out of control. And did you notice I said feel and not be? The key to understanding what causes perfectionism is to realize that it has nothing to do with achievement and everything to do with emotion. You see, perfectionism isn't about achieving perfection. That's a misconception. We tend to think about perfectionism in terms of behaviors and outcomes, when in reality, it's about mindset. You know? A lot of people tend to think that perfectionism is about whether you're able to come across the way you'd like and hit your target financially, for instance, or ensure that your plans go according to the way that you visualize them to go, etc., etc. And so in other words, perfectionism appears to be about perfecting things out there in the world. And this makes some sense given that the behaviors associated with perfectionism are visible and kind of easy to spot. Like, for example, it could be that you extend your work, like you tend to work all of the time, or you review what it is that you planned for the fifth time, and you put in an extra half an hour here and there on what it is that you wanted to do. Or it could be the complete opposite to that you just can't seem to get unstuck from the position you're in, and you're procrastinating on what it is that you visualize. And so that's that, right? People tend to think that it's about your behavior and that it's all about the outcomes. But it's really just the mindset, because that is where everything roots, right? And so just because behaviors are visible and easy to spot and easy to observe and easy to kind of see doesn't mean that they're the whole story or even the most important part of the story. The way we think about perfectionism is strongly influenced by the way it looks, right? But looks, as we all know, can be quite deceiving. And you, who are here right now, you will probably admit that you know intuitively that on some level, your expectations and efforts toward achieving perfectionistic outcomes are both unrealistic and detrimental, right? You do know that. You do know that true perfection is impossible. You're clever, and you know this. There's one central paradox of perfectionism. Perfectionists know that achieving perfection and doing things perfectly is impossible, and yet they feel driven to keep trying anyway. It's like they're in a war with themselves, when in reality, it's a war between their conscious mind and their subconscious mind. So what causes perfectionism if it's not the drive to achieve perfection? Most perfectionism begins as a childhood response to some form of trauma, which can be both actual or perceived, and its emotional consequences. So let's look at some examples here, right? So here's the first example. After a difficult divorce, an only child begins trying to be perfect because they believe the separation was somehow their fault, and that never making mistakes will prevent future family disruptions and assuage their guilt. Here's another one. Because the older brother was the good-looking, athletic one, and the younger sister was the funny, charismatic one, the middle child learns to work inordinately hard in order to gain attention and affection. Here's another one. As a child of a violent and erratic alcoholic parent, the oldest sibling learns to obsessively plan for every possible contingency each afternoon when coming home from school in order to protect herself and her siblings and to feel safe. Furthermore, as the parents spend long hours with their work and mostly praise their children when doing well in school and activities, one of the kids picks up that working hard must be the way to earn love and affection. Also, during primary school, a child experiences being left out of the group and comes home to a mentally struggling mother and quickly learns to adapt the challenging environment by getting good grades and holding space in the family. And in fact, the last one here, that was my main cause of my perfectionism. In each case, the habit of striving for perfection was initially triggered by a disturbing situation and the need to ease a painful emotion. Rinse and repeat for a few decades, and you've got a strongly ingrained habit of striving for perfection in order to feel good, or at least less badly. Each time a painful emotion arises, the brain remembers that perfectionistic striving leads to some emotional relief in the past, and so it pushes us toward the option in the present. And each time we follow through with this push, we strengthen the connection between painful emotion and perfectionistic striving. This is how vicious cycles get formed. And this is how you start running on the hamster wheel, refusing to accept any standard short of perfection. You see, perfectionists don't engage in perfectionistic behaviors because they're under the delusion that they'll actually achieve perfection. They do it because it temporarily provides relief from a painful or uncomfortable feeling. So what is the painful or uncomfortable feeling that you get relief from? You may ask yourself. That is what you want to ask. So what causes perfectionism isn't the desire to be perfect. It's the desire to feel perfect. And that is why a perfectionist refuses to accept and why they're in denial and why their biggest fear is to be vulnerable and be out of control. Now that we've talked about why a perfectionist refuses to accept, let's talk about what a perfectionist refuses to accept. And this is essential to understand because this is often the best way to detect how your emotional pain and perfectionism actually manifests and what it is directed toward. So let me tell you about the 3 different ways perfectionism can manifest. It can be directed toward the self, to others, or to society, or even all of these. And so when it's directed toward the self, you have excessively high personal expectations. When it's directed toward others, you have excessively high expectations of others. And when it's directed toward society, you have excessively high social expectations. In all of these cases, you're having excessively high expectations. And you know what? Expectations is a form of resistance to acceptance. That's really what it is, and that is what creates suffering. These 3 are in psychology actually called self-oriented perfectionism, other-oriented perfectionism, and socially prescribed perfectionism. Just as a little bit of a disclaimer here, I do not tell you that this is to kind of label you or to put you in a box of some sort. In fact, this is all about building self-awareness here. You're not a self-oriented, other-oriented, or socially prescribed perfectionist. You may have the perfectionism types, but that doesn't mean that you need to identify with them. You can perceive them as visitors in your life. And so I'm showing you this because it helps you better understand what we're dealing with here. And also, if we're a self-oriented perfectionist, it's not like we're just that and not the others necessarily. Oftentimes, we kind of are a bit of each type without necessarily being consciously aware of it or willing to admit it. And that's why perfectionism is so sneaky. And again, why we're living in denial. So now, let me explain a bit further what characterizes these different types. Now, the first type would be that of the self-oriented perfectionist. And so this is where you adhere to strict standards while maintaining strong motivation to attain perfection and avoid failure. So you engage in stringent self-evaluation. For example, you're criticizing yourself for getting B instead of A on a test. It could manifest too in the way that you basically criticize yourself for not attaining that in which you set out to do. And so what's really happening here is that you're imposing these strict standards, shoulds, and have-tos onto yourself. And if you do not meet those strict standards, if you do not satisfy those shoulds and have-tos, what happens is that you don't just see that as something that has to do with your behavior. You believe that that says something about your sense of worth. And so you see now how your performance is intertwined with your sense of self, with your worth. Now, this is truly exhausting and it's toxifying your mind with a lot of words that tend to be very disempowering. And so this not only stop you from, actually embodying the sunflower and bloomer that you truly are, it also stops you from experimenting, from creating, from actually expressing yourself to your fullest capacity, yeah? Now, when you're invested into self-oriented perfectionism, you're actually dissociating from the essence, the spirit, the sunflower and bloomer within you in order to maintain an illusion of ever getting to a stage of feeling absolutely perfect, which you will never get there because that finish line will always move as you move towards it. See? And so this is what is so fatiguing. That is what keeps you also running on this hamster wheel. Furthermore, you could also have tendencies of an other-oriented perfectionist. And so an other-oriented perfectionist sets unrealistic standards for significant others like partners, children, coworkers, friends, coupled with a stringent evaluation of others' performances. Now, an example would be you getting annoyed when someone's not performing at your level on a group project. When it comes to other-oriented perfectionism, very often this is simply a projection of the strict standards that you have put onto yourself. Thus, self-oriented perfectionism and other-oriented perfectionism very often go hand in hand. You could have self-oriented perfectionism without other-oriented perfectionism, without projecting onto others. But oftentimes, when you have other-oriented perfectionistic tendencies, you do already have self-oriented perfectionism within you. See what I mean? And so with other-oriented perfectionism, this oftentimes tears on your relationships, and it shows up very often as you projecting what it is that you want of yourself onto others around you, that you want them to show up the way that you yourself would benefit from. Also, you want others to show up in a way where they do not kind of make you look or feel worse. See? So that is how other-oriented perfectionism actually works. And it kind of brings a lot of guilt with it sometimes because you, at your core, right? Your spirit, your essence, as well as the sunflower and the bloomer within you, that essence knows that it's not necessary to project onto others. Because the essence in you knows that everyone is worthy. See? And so that is why you tend to feel guilt. Because again, you've dissociated from that in which you truly are. So this makes you feel not only worse about yourself, and it doesn't not only say something about your worth, it says something about the way that you also treat other people's worth. And so this is not just something about, your behavior. You believe that it has to do with your own worth and the way that you see the worth of others. And so that is what creates some sort of guilt, as well as even shame. Furthermore, we have that of the socially prescribed perfectionist. And so socially prescribed perfectionists could be someone who believes that others hold unrealistic expectations for their behavior and that they can't live up to this. And so they experience external pressure to be perfect and believe others evaluate them critically. Now, an example would be you staying in your job out of a feeling of obligation. You could basically replace job with anything, right? And so this has all to do with obligation. This basically comes down to the kind of conditioning that has been imposed on you growing up. Because that is what has basically wired your subconscious mind to project something onto the screen of space, and you have taken action in accordance to that. And so when you're a socially prescribed perfectionist, you tend to rather do what you believe that you should do, what you have to do, and avoid the things that you can't do in order to raise up to the unrealistic expectations that you believe others have of you. See? So you constantly kind of look through the lens of other people. Look through the lens of society. Look through the lens of something beyond you. See? Doesn't really matter what it is that you're looking through, but I know one thing for sure, and that is that you do not look through your own essence lens. You're looking through the lens of something externally for what it is that you are supposed to do. So all of these kind of supposed to thoughts, they weigh on you, right? Because they're not in resonance truly with what it is that you want. So this is extremely draining. And not only that, socially prescribed perfectionism is getting more and more and more common and widespread as well as society is changing. So now you see how with perfectionism, we can indeed dissect it into these 3 different types. And you're the one who best knows how perfectionism manifests for you and which kind of types that you resonate most with. Also knowing and being aware of that not all of them necessarily will show up all at once. It may depend on the kind of area that you look upon as well within your life and business. And so now you get to be aware that there are different ways in which perfectionism shows up, as well as the kind of, mindset that is happening beneath all of these different types. Now, remember to keep an open mind here. You are not defined by your perfectionism. And you're definitely not alone. Let's look at some proof here. So this is taken from a study done by Thomas Curran and Andrew P. Hills, who did a meta-analysis study on perfectionism from 1989 to 2016. And so they basically took a lot of different studies, gathered them together, and ended up with a result based on that, right? Looking at how perfectionism developed over time. And so don't be thrown off here, right, by these graphs. All I really want you to focus on here is the fact that for each of these graphs, both self-oriented, socially prescribed, and other-oriented perfectionism, they're all increasing. Do you see that? And if you look a little bit closer, you can actually see that the socially prescribed perfectionism is increasing at 3 times the rate of the other 2. In fact, it's increasing with 32%. And so the reason that's a little bit problematic here is that this is a dimension, this is the type of perfectionism most strongly correlated with psychological difficulties. And so you might now be like, okay, how did they figure this out? Well, again, these guys, they basically took a comprehensive look, right, at the rates of perfectionism over a longer period of time. And so there are so many different ways of measuring perfectionism out there that the researchers literally had to wait until a solid one. In this case, Flett and Hewitts, who had been around long enough and had been used across enough studies. And so in all, the studies added up to a pool of more than 40,000 US, UK, and Canadian undergraduate students. So this study is real stuff. And what this study really means is that from the 1980s and onwards, the neoliberal governance in the Western world has emphasized competitive individualism, and people have seemingly responded in kind by agitating to perfect themselves and their lifestyles, and to be able to just feel more and more perfect. So now that you've seen some proof here, where is the increase coming from? Now, when you keep in mind here that perfectionism stems from really marrying your identity with your achievements and your performance, the question really might become, where isn't the increase coming from? After all, many of us actually live in societies where the first question when you meet someone is this: what do you do? You've probably been to, a dinner or something, or an event, or even met strangers, and if it's not the first thing they ask, they will eventually ask, what do you do for a living? What do you do? What do you do? What do you do? And so in our culture, we get asked all the time. So you get the point here, right? We're so literally valued for the quality and extent of our accomplishments and our performance that those achievements and that kind of a performance often correlate directly to our ability to earn money for a living. Like complete strangers literally weigh these on paper values to determine everything from whether, I can rent that flat or buy that car or receive that loan. And so we live in societies now where we signal our access to those resources with our appearance. These shoes, that physique, and other people weigh that in turn to see if we're the right person for anything. So not only is perfectionism a way of coping with emotional pain experienced in childhood, it could also be caused by the culture that has manifested in our society. Also, failure is severe in a market-based society. If you think about it, it's truly become this thing among companies and different markets to try to make us feel bad and feel like, we're failing in some way just so that they can sell their products and services to us. And this market to make us feel bad strategy has become more and more intensified. And not only that, competition has become more and more embedded in everything that we do and from an earlier age as well. So we're conditioned to believe that there are winners and that there are losers. And as a result of all of this, it's no wonder that, we condition ourselves and recondition ourselves to put more pressure on not only ourselves, but on others, and to achieve more and perform more and be more. So let's now cover how society is making a perfectionism boom. This increase in perfectionism is not coming out of nowhere, is it? This is what it is. It's really this simple. Perfectionism, and especially socially prescribed perfectionism, is a result of cause and effect. This is just an over-agitative graph right here that I've made, but this is really the mechanism that we're seeing in this study. So back in the 1980s, right, the market was indirectly like, you're a failure, buy this and buy that, right? You need this to be whole and complete. And then, of course, the effect on the perfectionism of people at that time were so little that they just kept going. They just kept basically satisfying all of the shoulds and the have-tos that society imposed on them without questioning it. And it's just now in recent years that perfectionism has, truly increased. And so as one person becomes a perfectionist and rewarded for it, then soon the others will pick up on it, right? And then soon 1/3 of the, entirety of the population would be perfectionists. And you can see on the research, right, where this is going. Perfectionism will be increasing and increasing and increasing. And the more the perfectionism in the world will be increasing, the lower memory will we have of what caused the perfectionism boom in the first place. And then suddenly it just becomes a new normal. Like, you don't have to be a psychologist or a researcher or anything like that to understand where this is going to go unless we wake up and we overcome it. And that's what Bloom Beyond supports you to do. So now we've gone through most of the definition of what a perfectionist is, right? And the definition is that a perfectionist is a person who refuses to accept any standard short of perfection. As a person, this is you. Cross that one out. And then refuses to accept that is what you're doing and how you're thinking. And we've crossed that one out. And so the next thing up right now is any standard short of perfection, which is the level of quality and attainment you're striving for. In fact, it's the overall goal. And this brings me over to the hamster wheel of perfectionism. Why do people get stuck in the hamster wheel of perfectionism? Have you thought about that? So this surface level goal, right, that perfectionists have to refuse to accept any standard short of perfection, it's kind of sad. Why? Well, because as a perfectionist, you think that you're going to get some out of this world temporary emotional relief and feel really good at some point, and that you're going to get the fruits that you're wanting once you do or become X. And you could fill in the blank there, right? And this might be happening subconsciously or consciously or both. But That's not really what's happening here. What's happening is that because any standard short of perfection is very subjective and constantly changing in your mind, there's always something more, right? You're in an endless vicious cycle here. And because it's impossible to be and feel perfect, it's completely fruitless too. It's, in fact, so fruitless that at some point in your perfectionism journey, you're feeling completely empty. And everything that you do will feel utterly and completely pointless. You're just like running on this hamster wheel without any care of any reward of anything. Let's say that you are a socially prescribed perfectionist that feels obligated to stay in your familiar circumstance, right? And so for so long, you felt this need to basically satisfy all of these shoulds and have tos and make sure to avoid everything that you can't do, right? And so you've done this even though that you've in your core known what it is that you truly wanted to do. And then if you then now, let's say, stay in that hamster wheel of proving your worth by basically continuing to feed into all of these shoulds and have tos and can'ts, then at some point you will start questioning, why am I doing this? And then if you don't pay attention to that nudge and you just keep on running, this voice will intensify. And it will be like, why on earth am I doing this? And you will start kind of looking at other people oftentimes that do what it is that you want to do. And you will kind of have waves of envy oftentimes. Now, at some point, you will begin to see that you're not the only one who's stuck in this hamster wheel of perfectionism. And this is when it becomes normalized, not only to you, but everyone else too. Because as more people run on this hamster wheel of perfectionism, it's basically a way of giving others subconscious permission to do the very same. And so this is why perfectionism spreads. Suddenly, living your life is not fruitful. It's not fruitless. It's pointless. And this is where perfectionism gets really dangerous. And this is why I'm on this mission to help people bloom beyond this. Because you see, when you start seeing your life as pointless, your business as pointless, everything as pointless, joyless, and you start seeing yourself as useless, this can lead to terrible consequences. It might not be that you have reached this point, but this is indeed where it goes with perfectionism. It's like you're in this vicious cycle, right, between perfectionism and depression. You literally feel depressed. You try again, it's all or nothing. You get an insatiable drive, then you reach burnout, and then you get depressed, and then you feel a spark, regain motivation. And then if the job is worth doing, it must be done well or not at all. And then if you choose to go all in, you focus on the flaws and lose satisfaction in the progress. And then you forget self-care, push harder and burn candle at both ends. And ultimately, this leads to feeling stuck and overwhelmed, where nothing is good enough and feels like a failure. Do you see how sneaky and vicious this cycle is? Again, you might be finding yourself in a certain point in this, vicious cycle. It might not be that you actually, go full circle here. But again, this is a vicious cycle of perfectionism and depression. And these things actually go hand in hand. Because the thing is that when you suppress the essence within you, right? The spirit within you, the sunflower and the bloomer within you, that takes energy. It takes energy to be suppressing and repressing that in which you truly are. And so what are you left with then? Well, you don't have any energy left. And so you then fall into depression. You fall into depression after going round and round and round in circles with perfectionism. Now that we've covered the misconceptions of perfectionism and the definition of what it truly is, you might be wondering how perfectionism plays out in life and business and what the opposite of perfectionism is. Because of course, no one has the same perfectionism and no one, has the same degree of it either. And it certainly plays out in different ways for different people. I mean, we're all different and unique, right? So that would make sense. If you take a look at this hamster wheel right here, you now understand how that is a representation of the life of a person who's driven by perfectionism. They're never even getting anywhere, right? Even though that it might seem like that, they're really not. Because again, the finish line is moving as you move towards it. Now, a metaphor for the journey to move beyond perfectionism is that of a sunflower. And so when someone is blocked by perfectionism, in my opinion, they're like a wilted sunflower. I know because I've been there myself. And I know that perfectionism is not life-giving, it's life-draining. Now, the opposite of perfectionism is blooming. So let's look at what's different between perfectionism and blooming, all right? And we're going to look at these different areas: relationship with goals, bias for action, personal satisfaction, macro versus micro, contribution versus self, attitude toward failures, as well as mindfulness. So let's start off with relationship with goals. So when you're wilting, right, when you're in perfectionism, you feel weighed down by your goals. There's a fear that you may not succeed or do as well as you like. Whereas when you're blooming, right, in the life beyond perfectionism, you feel positively motivated by your goals. There's a sense of excitement and joy as you work on them, right? You also kind of frame your goals a little differently. It's the relationship with your goal that actually changes. It's not that you no longer set any goals. It's more so that you have a different approach to them, and you don't attach your sense of worth to whether you quote unquote, accomplish them or not. It's more so about who you become in the process and in the journey of, moving towards them. See? And you basically, instead of saying that it's all about, the finish line, it's more so about the intention and the energy that you put behind you growing. Then we have bias for action. And so when you're wilting in perfectionism, you procrastinate in anticipation of that perfect, quote unquote, moment to do something. And so you're then over planning and over consuming information without application. This might also show up as you just like busying yourself, where you're invested in a lot of different things, right? But the only issue is that you're not necessarily dealing with the essential thing, right? And so that is what happens when you are, wilting. So when you're then blooming in life beyond perfectionism, you focus on taking action while improving as you go along. You know that when you show up, that is when you gain momentum, right? Showing up is the key. And then improving is what will happen in between each time that you show up. Furthermore, with regards to personal satisfaction, when you're wilting in perfectionism, you feel dissatisfaction with what you've created or achieved. Nothing is ever enough, and you're feeling empty inside. Now, when you're blooming in life beyond perfectionism, you celebrate every small victory and you give yourself credit where credit is due, right? You clap yourself on the shoulder and you say, well done for showing up and for being you, for being who it is that you are, for really embodying this essence that you truly are, for embodying the spirit within, for embodying the sunflower and the bloomer. Furthermore, with macro versus micro, when you're wilting in perfectionism, you obsess about correcting details that have no impact on the big picture, often at the expense of other priorities. And you can imagine what that does to everything in your life and business. And also, even in relationships, you can become very obsessed about small, tiny little things. Furthermore, then, with blooming, when you're in life beyond perfectionism, you then recognize the big picture and you do what is necessary to grow, never really getting caught up in the weeds. So you're able to kind of go a little macro instead of being caught up in the micro of things. And I can also say that once you bloom beyond perfectionism, you're actually able to kind of go macro, micro, macro, micro. You're able to zoom in and out and kind of have more perspective. Now, we also have contribution versus self. So when you're wilting, when you're in perfectionism, you put all your energy in one life area and neglect several others. So it's all or nothing, black and white, and you're feeling imbalanced. Now, when you're blooming in life beyond perfectionism, you have a healthy focus on balancing different areas of life. Now, what's necessary here is being able to have contextual intelligence, being able to be like, okay, so what season of life am I in right now? What season of my business am I in right now? And what is it that would benefit me and the business in the long term here? Well, oftentimes that is being able to balance out different areas of life. Of course, sometimes some life area would require more attention than others, but it's being able to recognize that in the long haul, in the long term, it is necessary to be able to nourish different areas of your life because you are a whole being, right? And all of these different areas, they help you flourish. Also, we have attitude toward failures. So when you're wilting, when you're in perfectionism, you beat yourself up and perceive negative feedback as failures. See? When you're blooming, when you're in life beyond perfectionism, you focus on learning from failures when they happen. And you understand failure is part of growth. So you see that actually failures, if you even want to call it that, that's actually feedback. And feedback is necessary in the, journey of everything in order to be able to grow. Also, we have mindfulness. So when you're wilting, when you're in perfectionism, you obsess about the past and or future, and you're feeling stuck, really. Now, when you're blooming in life beyond perfectionism, you reframe your past. You stay present in the now and detach yourself from the outcome of the future. So you're able to basically cultivate a sense of mindfulness in your day to day. Now, you can be anywhere between wilting and blooming to apply to the Bloom Beyond WhatsApp group and garden. You can be wilting, falling, rooting, rising, and blooming. But one thing is for sure, regardless of where you are right now, you are worthy of growth. You are worthy of growth in all areas of your life and business. You are worthy of brightness, bravery, and balance. It is your birthright. The only thing stopping you might be perfectionism. You might be thinking to yourself, I've tried to overcome my perfectionism tendencies before, but it hasn't worked. Well, do you know why? It's because you haven't made a lasting change in your subconscious mind. Now we've covered what's good to know about both Bloom Beyond, me, and perfectionism. But what about the subconscious mind? A wonderful way to begin to getting to know the two functions of your mind is to think of it as a garden. And you are the gardener, right? You are planting seeds or sowing seeds of thought in your subconscious mind all day long. Much of the time, you are not even aware of doing so because the seeds are based on your habitual thinking. And so you don't really pay much attention to it. Now, as you sow in your subconscious mind, so shall you reap in your body and environment. That is a law. Now, imagine your subconscious mind as a bed of rich soil that will help all kinds of seeds to sprout and flourish, whether you consider them disempowering or empowering. Let me ask you a question now. If you sow thorns, will you gather grapes? No, of course not. Well, what about if you sow thistles? Will you harvest figs? No, absolutely not. Now, if you sow sunflower seeds, will you harvest sunflowers? Yes, that is absolutely correct indeed. So every thought is a cause and every condition is an effect. This is the reason it is so essential that you basically become aware of your thoughts and become mindful of your choice of words and what kind of images you observe going through your mind. Because abacadabra actually means that with words I create. That's how powerful it actually is. And so in that way, you can only bring forth only desirable conditions once you basically take charge of this. Now, what we basically encourage here at Bloom Beyond, we encourage you to begin to sow thoughts of brightness, bravery, and balance. And what you want to do is you want to imagine yourself as being bright, as being brave, as being balanced. Because that is what you then subconsciously will feel compulsive to create in your reality. You want to then think quietly and with conviction in these qualities. You want to accept them fully in your conscious reasoning mind. And then continue to just sow these wonderful seeds of thought in the garden of your mind, and you will reap glorious harvests. You see, when your mind thinks in this way, when you understand the truth, when the thoughts deposited in your subconscious mind are constructive, harmonious, peaceful, the magic working power of your subconscious mind will actually respond to that. And it will bring about harmonious conditions, agreeable surroundings, and the best of everything, in which is in alignment with the core essence of who you truly are. Once you begin to then become aware of your thought processes, you can then apply the powers of your subconscious to any difficulty, problem, and obstacle, such as perfectionism. You will actually then be consciously cooperating with the infinite power and the omnipotent law that governs all things. I mean, look around you. However you experience life, wherever you live, whomever you surround yourself with, you will notice that most people live in the world without, right? They're dependent on external circumstances and events. Those who bloom beyond perfectionism, however, are intensely involved with the world within, right? They see their worth. They realize, as you will too, that the world within creates the world without. As above, so below. That is a principle. Your thoughts, feelings, and visualized imagery are the organizing principles of your experience. The world within is the only creative power. Everything you find in your world of expression has been created by you in the inner world of your mind, whether consciously or subconsciously. Your mind is your most precious possession. It is always with you, but its most amazing powers will be yours only when you have learned how to use it. Once the subconscious mind accepts an idea, it will begin to execute it. It is an astonishing and subtle truth that the law of the subconscious mind works for good and bad ideas alike. Whatever you claim mentally and feel as true, your subconscious mind will accept and bring it into experience. The reaction or response you get from your subconscious mind will be determined by the nature of the thoughts or ideas you hold in your conscious mind. When thoughts are conveyed to your subconscious mind, impressions are made in the brain cells. And as soon as your subconscious mind accepts any idea, it proceeds to put it into effect immediately. You might not see the results immediately, but in your mind, your subconscious has already begun to act upon it. It uses every bit of knowledge that you gathered in your lifetime to bring about its purpose. It draws on the infinite power, energy, and wisdom within you. It lines up all the laws of nature to get its way. The conscious and subconscious are not two minds. They are merely two spheres of activity within one mind. And so your conscious mind is the reasoning mind. It is the kind of sphere of your mind that chooses. So for example, you choose where you live, you choose your, partner and whom you kind of surround yourself with. You choose, right? All of these different things in your life that you consider to be essential for you. You make all your decisions with your conscious mind, and decision in and of itself means to cut off. So that is what your conscious mind does. On the other hand, without any conscious choice on your part, your heart is actually kept functioning, right? Automatically. And the vital functions of digestion, circulation, and breathing are carried on by your subconscious mind through processes independent of your conscious control. And so your subconscious mind then is compulsive. It accepts what is impressed upon it or what you consciously believe. Yeah? It does not reason things out as your conscious mind does, and it does not argue with you controversially. Your subconscious mind is kind of like, again, this bed of soil that accepts any kind of seed, whether, again, it is disempowering or empowering. And so your thoughts are active. They are seeds. And so destructive thoughts continue to work in a destructive manner in your subconscious mind. And then sooner or later, they will emerge, right? And take shape as an outer experience that corresponds to their content, where you will then have destructive circumstances and you will have disempowering events. Your subconscious mind, again, does not engage in proving whether your thoughts are, disempowering or empowering, whether they are true or false. And so it responds according to the nature of your thoughts or suggestions. If you consciously assume that something is true, even though it may be false, your subconscious mind will accept it as true and proceed to bring about results that must necessarily follow, because you consciously assumed it to be true. The subconscious mind does not make the selections and comparisons that are necessary for a reasoning process. And so your subconscious mind, again, will accept any suggestion, however false or true. Having once accepted any suggestion, it responds according to the nature of the suggestion given indefinitely until interrupted. And so your conscious mind then is sometimes referred to as your objective mind because it deals with outward objects. The objective mind is aware of the objective world. You gain knowledge through your different senses, right? Through your vision, through your hearing, through your sense of smell, through your sense of taste, through your sense of touch, and beyond. And so your objective mind learns through observation, experience, and education. The greatest function of the objective mind is truly that of reasoning. So suppose that you are, one of hundreds of thousands of people who visit the Grand Canyon every year. Well, then you would come to the conclusion that it is indeed one of the, world's most amazing natural wonders. And this conclusion would be based on your observation of, the Grand Canyon's incredible depth, the complex shaping of the rock formations, and the beautiful play of colors among the different geological strata. This is the working of your objective mind. Your subconscious mind is referred to as the subjective mind. Your subjective mind is aware of its environment, but not by means of the physical senses. Your subjective mind perceives with intuition, with a heart. It is the seat of your emotions and the storehouse of your memory. So your subjective mind performs its highest functions when your objective senses are not functioning. It is that intelligence that makes itself known when the objective mind is suspended or in a sleepy, drowsy, relaxed state. Also, your subjective mind sees without the use of the natural organs of, vision. Your subjective mind also hears without the use of the natural organs of hearing. It has the capacity of clairvoyance and clairaudience. It can see and hear events that are taking place elsewhere. The subjective mind and the, subconscious mind also has the capacity for clairsentience, meaning clear feeling, as well as claircognizance, meaning clear knowing. It basically just feels something or knows something, in which you basically can feel and know through hunches and signs and synchronicities. You even have a deeper connection with your dreams and get to interpret them, in ways that words can't even fathom. And so do you see now how the subconscious mind is so powerful? Now, your subjective mind can leave your body, travel to distant lands, and bring back information that is often of the most exact and truthful character. I don't mean literally leave your body. I mean that the subconscious mind has the capacity to tap into a different field of intelligence, tap into subtle information that is constantly available. Yeah, that is what the subconscious mind can do. And so it can basically feel between the lines because it is the feeling mind. And so through your subjective mind, you can also then tap into the thoughts of others through telepathy. You can read the contents of sealed envelopes in a way, or kind of intuit the information that someone is about to send to you before it is being sent. It's very, very intuitive. And so your subconscious mind is, in a way, subjective. It is not objective, it is subjective. Furthermore, your conscious mind is also personal. It compares incoming information to what it already knows or has experience with, and makes decisions based upon that. Thus, it is also called the gatekeeper of the mind. It can say yes and no, right? Shouldn't have to or can't. And so your subconscious mind then, on the other hand, is the opposite of that. That is non-personal. It does not have the ability to argue or dispute what it is being told. And so if you give it wrong information, it will accept it as true. It will then work to make that information happen. And so it will bring your suggestions, even those that are false, that are disempowering and destructive, to pass as disempowering and destructive conditions and experiences and events in your life and business. And so everything that has happened in your life and business has been a result of thoughts impressed on your subconscious mind through belief. And belief is created when you basically have a mix of both repetition, conviction, and emotion involved. And so if you have communicated wrong or distorted concepts to your subconscious mind in accordance to perfectionism, it is of the most urgent importance to be able to correct them. The sure way to do this is by repeatedly giving your subconscious mind constructive, harmonious, and peaceful words and images, which then will become thoughts. And these become then seeds that you sow into your subconscious, yeah? And as these are frequently repeated, your subconscious mind accepts them, especially when you involve both emotion and conviction. In this way, then, you can form new, healthier habits of thought, for your subconscious mind is the seed of habit. That's what it is. The habitual thinking of your conscious mind establishes deep grooves in your subconscious mind. And if your habitual thoughts are harmonious, peaceful, and constructive, your subconscious mind will respond by creating harmony, peace, and constructive conditions. As well, when you then basically sow seeds into your subconscious that basically are in accordance to brightness, bravery, and balance, that is indeed what you will project onto the screen of space in which you call your reality. And so your subconscious mind simply reacts to the suggestions given to it by your conscious mind. Different people will react in different ways to the same suggestion because they have different subconscious conditioning or beliefs. Suggestion is the act or instance of putting something into your mind. Simple as that. It's the mental process by which the thought or idea that has been suggested is entertained, accepted, or put into effect. A suggestion cannot impose itself on the subconscious mind against the will of the conscious mind. Your conscious mind always has the power to reject the suggestion. What I mean by that is that if there are two conflicting beliefs in your mind, the one that is most habitual will win. That is the one in which oftentimes is stored in your subconscious mind. A suggestion has no power in and of itself, yeah? Its power arises from the fact that you accept it mentally. Only at that point do your subconscious powers begin to act according to the nature of the suggestion. You must be very careful to give your subconscious only those suggestions that inspires growth. Your subconscious mind doesn't understand a joke. It takes you at your word. And we're not just suggestible to what we tell ourselves. We're also suggestible to what others tell us. Heterosuggestion means suggestions from another person. And from the day we are born, we are bombarded with negative suggestions. Not knowing how to counter them, we subconsciously accept them and bring them into being as our experience. Here are some examples of negative suggestions. So it could be, you can't, you'll never amount to anything, you mustn't, you'll fail, you haven't got a chance, you're all wrong. What's the use? Nobody cares. There's no point in trying so hard. You're too much. Things are getting worse and worse. Life is an endless grind. Watch out, you will catch a terrible disease. You'll either succeed or you'll fail. Success comes to those who work their ass off. Make your parents proud. Do what you're told to do. You can't have it all at once. You can't trust a soul. And so by accepting heterosuggestions of this kind, you collaborate in bringing them to pass. They have contributed to the development of your perfectionism. And as a child, you were helpless when faced with the suggestions of others who were important to you. You didn't know any better, truly. The mind, both conscious and subconscious, was a mystery you did not even wonder about. As an adult, however, you are able to make choices, aren't you? You can use constructive auto-suggestion, which is reconditioning, to change the impressions made on you in the past. This is what Bloom Beyond does. The first step is to make yourself aware of the heterosuggestions that are operating on you. Unexamined, they can create behavior patterns like perfectionism that cause disempowering circumstances and events in your life and business. Every day, you hear dozens of stories that could sow the seeds of futility, fear, worry, anxiety, and impending doom. If you accept them and take them in, these thoughts of fear can cause you to lose the will for life. No kidding. Once you understand that you do not have to accept them, choices open up for you. You have within you the power to counteract all these destructive ideas by giving your subconscious mind constructive auto-suggestion. Study the things said to you. Closely examine their underlying meaning. And you will discover that many of them were nothing more than a form of propaganda. Its concealed purpose was and is to control you by instilling fear and perfectionism in you. Whatever the conscious reasoning mind of a person believes, the subconscious mind will accept and act upon. In themselves, the suggestions of others have no power over you. Whatever power they have, they gain because you give it to them through your own thoughts. You have to give your mental consent. You have to entertain and accept the thought. At that point, it becomes your own thought, and your subconscious works to bring it into experience. That's how you suddenly take on the identity of your thoughts. That's how you suddenly go from thinking perfectionistic thoughts every now and then to becoming a high-performing perfectionist all the time. You might be thinking, I still don't get the power of the subconscious mind. Well, let's take a moment and make it real for you. A great way to begin getting to know your subconscious mind is to experience its wonders on a bodily level. So when we're working with the subconscious mind at Bloom Beyond, we're using relaxation plus focused attention to speak to your subconscious mind. The body is much like a robot that simply responds to the instructions from the mind. Now let's do a fun experiment together so that you can see how very easy and effortless your body responds to mental pictures. Close your eyes and follow the instructions. So what I want you to do as you close your eyes is to allow a state of relaxation to come upon you. Allow for your breath to flow, to settle. And what I invite you to do as you feel yourself relax deeper and deeper and deeper is to imagine yourself in your home, sitting in the most comfortable place in your home. So what I invite you to do in your imagination is that as you're sitting there, stand up and walk into the kitchen. And as you see yourself now walk into the kitchen, you walk towards the fridge. You reach out and you grab the fridge door handle. And as you grab that fridge door handle, you feel that cold feeling of the fridge door handle. And as you pull it open, you see the light of the fridge come out and you feel the cold air. It's refreshing. Just lift lightly now on your feet as you look inside of the fridge. And as you do that, you see something in there that you might not have noticed before. Because right there, there's a bowl of beautiful yellow lemons. And I'd like you to right now reach inside and grab one of those lemons. And as you pick up that lemon, you feel how cold it is and you feel the rough peel. Now you can close the fridge door and you can put the lemon down on the countertop and pick up a knife from wherever you keep your knives, and you want to cut through the lemon. And as you cut through the lemon, I want you to feel that lemonly juice all over the countertop, and you can smell that sour, zesty scent that comes from a lemon. I want you to now cut that lemon across one more time as you get 4 quarters. And as you cut through, you can feel that juice from the lemon. You can smell it, and it's super sour. And then I want you to just pick up one piece of lemon and bring it closer to your mouth. And take a nice big bite. And feel that lemony juice all inside your mouth. Now, open your eyes. Is there a little bit more saliva in your mouth than there was before? Yes? But was there a lemon? No. The reason why that happens is because the subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between real and imagined. And whatever the mind imagines, the body reacts to biochemically. What does that mean then? Well, we work with your mind, but your body can actually respond biochemically and help you change your habits and behaviors effortlessly. Let's do one more experiment, shall we? So keep your hands outstretched in front of you and simultaneously close your eyes. Great. So now that you've closed your eyes, go ahead and turn your right hand over and imagine as clearly as you can a heavy yellow book, right? It's as heavy as that of a dictionary. While on your left hand, you imagine a large helium yellow balloon that's tied to your wrist. And what's happening now is that your right hand with the heavy, very heavy, extremely heavy book on your right hand is becoming heavier and heavier and heavier. It's so heavy that you just can't seem to hold your hand up. It's going down, 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 further down because it's so heavy. You just can't seem to hold your arm up. The more you resist, the further down your hand goes. Whilst your left hand with a yellow balloon tied to it, it's so light. It's so light. It goes up, it moves up, it travels up, further and further and further up, because this yellow helium balloon, it takes it up easily and effortlessly. You can feel your hand being carried up, 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 up. It's amazing. So now I'd like you to gently open your eyes and see how your hands are positioned. Have you noticed that your right hand, where this yellow imaginary book was held, is further down than the left hand, which had this yellow balloon tied to it? Now, this all happened in your imagination. And this all happened because of the suggestions that I gave you. So do you see the power of the subconscious mind now? I mean, you've practically actually felt it now, haven't you? And you've learned quite a bit about it. But let's now cover also the rules of the mind so that you can better understand why this is all happening. Now, what are the rules? First, what is expected tends to be realized. Take, for instance, vision boards. How come that vision boards seem to work for so many people, especially looking back in hindsight? How come that so many people just put a bunch of pictures and words together on the wall or in their journal, which they review, and then years later, they have manifested it? That is because they expose these pictures and words to their subconscious on a repetitive basis, which we know that the subconscious mind is compulsive and non-personal. And so the subconscious is instantly compelled to orchestrate everything to make it happen. Subconsciously, what actually then happens is that it attracts different people and places and events to this person that has envisioned it in order to make it real. Not only that, the subconscious mind also does everything in its power to basically call you into becoming that in which you have envisioned yourself to be. Because when you subject yourself and your subconscious to something repeatedly with enough emotion and conviction, that becomes an expectation at a subconscious level. Now, a lot of high performers tend to have a lot of high and unrealistic expectations that basically create suffering. And expectations tend to be a form of resistance, where when you have an expectation, you attach your sense of self-worth to something happening in accordance to how you envisioned it to go, right? Now, that is one way of aligning to expectation, but when you bloom beyond perfectionism, you have a different way of approaching it. You have positive expectation without the attachment to the outcome. That creates a different type of energy, different energetic approach. So just know that what is expected tends to be realized. And you can literally manifest anything that you expect. For instance, you can manifest perfectionism and you can continue to re-manifest it over and over and over again through basically putting your attention upon that in which you have previously put your attention upon, because where your attention goes, your energy flows. And what tends to make expectation out of perfectionism, and where you tend to become more and more expectant of the perfectionism continuing to be this pattern in your life, is by you basically putting your attention to the different things that confirm it. By, for instance, looking at your own patterns, seeing yourself fall back into old tendencies, or seeing other people exhibit perfectionism and them just being the same way as before. That creates an expectation that perfectionism is normal, that it is familiar, and that it basically will just continue onwards. So you see how this actually is all about expectation, and that what is expected tends to be realized. But keep in mind here that you could also choose with your consciousness to basically go the other way around, to say, you know what? I would rather choose to manifest a life and business beyond perfectionism by basically growing through this program, giving my attention to it, my energy to it, and basically then expecting, without attaching to the outcome, that I will grow. See? That is what this first kind of rule of the subconscious mind is about. Then, next up, imagination is more powerful than knowledge. You know, Einstein actually said that the true sign of intelligence is not knowledge, but imagination. You gotta understand, the subconscious mind is the mind in which imagines. It is very imaginative. It is very creative. And in a battle between imagination and knowledge in our mind, imagination always tends to win. Everything that, we can see in our reality right this moment has come to life through our imagination. Just take a moment and look around you. Everything that you see pretty much is a manifestation of what has happened in someone's subconscious mind. Without our imagination, we wouldn't have the knowledge of it, would we? With imagination, we get to have the knowledge of it. For instance, how would we be able to know that we could go to the moon without someone first imagining it and imagining that it would be a possibility? Likewise, all that matters in this Bloom Beyond Perfectionism journey is that you can imagine yourself living a life and having a business beyond perfectionism. And the knowledge that you indeed can live such a life can only come to you once you then feed the imagination exactly what you want. So imagination always wins over knowledge. And keep in mind too that the subconscious cannot hold two different conflicting beliefs at the same time, and cannot basically have the imagination and the knowledge kind of conflict each other. They must walk hand in hand. That is when you basically align with the subconscious. Then we have that imagination is more powerful than logic. So not only is imagination more powerful than knowledge, it's also more powerful than logic. Even Einstein, again, said that basically logic will get you from A to B, but imagination will take you everywhere. For instance, your logic, your rational mind, right? Your conscious mind can tell you to stop overworking yourself, but your subconscious imagination will convince you to keep working more and more and more and more and keep on hustling and grinding, right? And that is because in your imagination, outside of your conscious awareness, you might end up not being appreciated and getting bad feedback if you don't work those extra hours or put those in, right? This is what keeps the tendency to overwork going. It's because the imagination of bad consequences is much more powerful than the logic of ending work early to then take care of your health, of yourself, of those around you, right? So we can make whatever we imagine come true because the logic of thinking we can't is not as strong. Another rule is this one. Your subconscious mind always does what it thinks you want it to do. And so your subconscious mind always listens, and it doesn't even take a joke. It takes you for your word, whether you remember the words or not, and it doesn't care about your age either. Therefore, if you, for instance, expressed yourself fully and completely as a kid, and you got humiliated, rejected, kind of isolated because of it, and you then told yourself, I will never, ever, ever do that again. I will never express myself again. I will never fail again. I will never put myself in this risk. What happens then? Your subconscious mind picks that up. And so it listened to that. And it then said, okay, I'm going to make sure that you never, ever, ever fail ever again. And so what does the subconscious mind do when you grow up? It keeps you away from any type of position in which you will risk failure, humiliation, rejection. Therefore, you end up never taking risks. So this is your mind's job. It basically does what it thinks you want it to do. Now, because your subconscious mind always does what it thinks you want it to do, it's a good idea to begin to tell yourself, to tell your subconscious mind what you want. And basically, instead of focusing on what you don't want, flip those kinds of things to what it is that you do want. You see, your mind will go about attracting to you what you do want and what you don't want. Why is that? Well, look at it this way. If I'll tell you, don't think of a black sunflower, you must make a mental picture in your mind of that sunflower in order to know what not to think about, don't you? You know this too if you've ever had a heartbreak. You might have told yourself then to not think about your ex, but that only made it worse, didn't it? Because then you certainly started ruminating about your ex. Best thing is to basically relax the mind into what you don't want and then basically flip it to what you do want. And focus all your attention on what you do want. And then tell your mind accordingly. Here are some other rules of the subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind works to move you from pain to pleasure. That makes sense, doesn't it? It's a survival instinct. But you know, don't you, that you get to choose what pain or pleasure is. Some people link pleasure to pain. Let me give you an example. People who are getting tattooed link pleasure to needles. Some people say, I can't get on a plane in case it falls down out of the sky and I die. You see, humans are the only people on the planet who can choose what pain and pleasure is. You see, I couldn't put a cat in a jacuzzi because they don't like water. I couldn't take a husky dog on the beach in Hawaii and go, oh, isn't this 90 degrees temperature amazing? They'll just go. They'll say, no, not for me. I hate it. But we, as bloomers, we get to choose. And if you want to bloom beyond perfectionism in life and business, right, you must link pleasure to pain. When you have a brilliant mind, and you have a brilliant mind, here's your choice. Rationalize why things are bad. Talk yourself out of it. Like, I'll do it tomorrow. I'm just going to read one more book before I start building my business, right? Or I love seeing my vision come to life day by day. So be very clear, right? That your mind wants to move you towards pleasure and away from pain. And you, as a bloomer, get to choose what it is that you would like to reframe into something that is pleasurable. Now, regardless of where you are on the perfectionism pendulum, which I like to call it, whether you are hustling, working your ass off, and just like finding a lot of pride in your performance, or whether you are procrastinating, it doesn't really matter where you are on this kind of perfectionism pendulum. The thing here is that both ends tend to perceive something to be painful. So the hustlers tend to basically see relaxation as painful, whereas the procrastinators tend to see action as painful. And so the hustlers could actually get a lot of benefits out of beginning to see relaxation as something pleasurable. And also, we have the procrastinators, which could benefit from seeing action as something pleasurable, as that would create balance. Do you see what I mean? This is what this is about. It's about beginning to see that you get to choose what you would like to perceive as pleasurable, because when you do, your subconscious mind will follow that. Because your subconscious mind works to move you from pain to pleasure. Now, your subconscious mind responds to the pictures in your head and the words you say to yourself. So if I tell you to imagine right now a butterfly that is sitting in your palm, you'd basically then have to create a picture of that in your mind. And that picture will give you a feeling, probably of peace or something similar to that. And if I tell you to imagine having a cockroach or a worm or even a snake in your hand, however, your subconscious mind will instantly respond to that picture by giving you basically chills. And why is it giving you chills? It wants you to then stay away from those kinds of things, like worms and cockroaches and snakes, right? That's very primal, yeah? It's very, very, very emotional. And it is something in which the conscious mind just can't grasp. It goes straight to the subconscious, to the subliminal parts of the mind. Unless you have had very positive experiences with worms and cockroaches and snakes, right? So we respond physically, emotionally, spiritually, and even biochemically to the pictures and words in our mind. And how is this relevant for overcoming perfectionism and making a life and business of freedom? Well, let me tell you, when I built Bloom Beyond, I had sunflowers all over my home. I smell them and I water them and I nourish them and I imagine them to be a representation of the sunflowers and bloomers in my tribe that basically get to work with me. And this is basically a way to get comfortable with the idea that you're about to create. And when you want something, it's essential to be crystal clear about what you will see, hear, smell, taste, touch when you have it. Because the subconscious mind doesn't care whether it's real or imagined. So when I wanted to start this Bloom Beyond business, I literally went out into my parents' garden and I sowed seeds there. And I said, next month, I'm helping high performers overcome perfectionism with their subconscious mind. I attract what I desire. I have bright ideas. I monetize myself. And my mind responded to those pictures and words, and it drove me to basically then take aligned action accordingly to make it real. And that's also because I focused on what I wanted and not what I didn't want. I never used words like, I don't know where the clients will be coming from. I don't know how to get there. I won't be able to do this. That's beyond my wildest dreams. I have to please others to get what I want. I must push myself to get what I want. I have to hustle and work my ass off. I never get to travel and work at the same time Because where will the money come from? No. I told myself the opposite. I took that and I flipped it around. I said, I am a sunflower. I am a bloomer. I am a boss bloomer. And I instantly, easily, and effortlessly attract and call to me other high performers with perfectionism who would like to create a life and business of freedom from perfectionism with the power of the subconscious mind. I am bright, brave, and balanced, and so are they. All I do is I activate that within them with my presence and what I offer. Everything is easy. It's effortless. It happens naturally. And so it is, right? So this is what I said. I made the whole vision kind of compelling. And so my subconscious mind was drawn to that to make it real. And so that is what I recommend you to do too. To keep in mind that your subconscious mind responds to the pictures in your head and the words you say to yourself. Particularly pay attention to what you say after the words I am. Furthermore, the subconscious mind learns by repetition. This is probably one of the most important rules of the subconscious mind, and it's a fun one too because it's pretty obvious, isn't it? There's a reason why we have certain automatic thoughts and behaviors. And that's very often because we have repeated them on a daily basis or very often. And so when you repeat something, it starts to get embedded in the subconscious mind. And there it stays until it's replaced by something else. Something that is repeated, something that has emotion to it, something that you have conviction about. Some of the modalities like rapid transformational therapy in the Bloom Beyond method is designed to condition your mind positively through repetition. So through repetition of suggestions, your subconscious mind is learning to move you toward what is being suggested, towards growth. Another example is when you basically pass your vision board repeatedly on a daily basis. And so your mind is learning to take you basically into that vision board, literally, or take the vision board towards you. See? You basically then manifest that in which you have envisioned by repeatedly making yourself accessible to it, by letting the images and words sink into your subconscious repeatedly. So this is how you wire it into yourself. This is how you basically sow seeds in your subconscious mind. It's through repetition. And the fact is, you have a choice about what it is that you repeatedly make yourself subject to. Furthermore, your subconscious mind loves what is familiar. It would prefer, truly, to keep you with what is familiar. But here's something to consider. You can make anything you like familiar. It's a choice as well. Think about it. Once upon a time, grabbing a banana and putting it on your hair was actually familiar, right? When you were a kid. But it's not something that you do anymore. It's no longer familiar to you to behave like that. In the same way that you've kind of made playing with food unfamiliar, you can make perfectionism unfamiliar. So if procrastinating is familiar, you can make it unfamiliar. If sabotaging yourself is familiar, you can make that unfamiliar too. And this is what it takes to change it. Repetition and conviction and emotion. One must basically then say, with repetition, conviction, and emotion, I will make sabotaging myself unfamiliar and believing in myself familiar. I will make pushing myself to the limit unfamiliar and finding a balance in my life familiar, right? When you then do that, the mind will then go, oh, you say this all the time. This must be true. So I'll let it in now. And the subconscious mind lets it in because it is like the soil. It accepts whatever you sow into it. Next up, and lastly, we make our beliefs and then our beliefs make us. There's this saying by Buddha, what you think, you become. What you feel, you attract. What you imagine, you create. And I think it pretty much sums up how the subconscious mind works. When we take charge of our subconscious beliefs, our, new subconscious beliefs will make us. And so why don't we just set up our beliefs for blooming beyond perfectionism? Because remember this, your subconscious mind does not care if what you tell it is right or wrong, good or bad, true or false, healthy or unhealthy. It takes you at your word and works to make it a belief. See, I really invite you to understand here that the law of life is the law of belief. A belief can be summed up as a thought in your mind. As a person thinks, feels, and believes, so is the condition of his or her mind, body, and circumstances. All you have to then do is to unite mentally and emotionally with the good wish to embody. The creative power of your subconscious will respond accordingly. And soon your beliefs will make up who you are. So make sure you believe everything that will truly make you the brightest, bravest, and most balanced bloomer that you can be. Because again, we make our beliefs and then our beliefs make us. Since you've stayed this far, you might be wondering, what's next? Well, again, this is our Bloom Beyond motto, right? So I truly invite you to apply to the Bloom Beyond WhatsApp group and garden, because that's where you will get direct access to me and the rest of the tribe of sunflowers and bloomers. Now, remember that this group has a 256 members limit, and if your application actually shows that you're curious and serious about overcoming perfectionism, you will be added to the waiting list to join a future cohort, and then you will be notified when it's your turn to join. And if that's you, awesome. Go ahead and apply right now, because then I will see you in there if you get accepted. I would love to support your journey, and I'd love to see you embody the most bright, brave, and balanced version of yourself that you can possibly be in your life and business. And then who knows, we might even work together in either of our paid programs to create a life and business of freedom from perfectionism with the power of the subconscious mind, and for you to be able to contribute beyond yourself in the way that you would like. What's essential right now is that you take responsibility for yourself in your life and your business, and to make a pattern interrupt in the way that you've been thinking, acting, and behaving, and to live at cause rather than live in effect of the perfectionism. Because if you just continue to think, act, and behave in the way that you've always done in accordance to perfectionism, guess what? You will continue to have perfectionistic conditions, events, and things happen in your life and business. See? And so a way that you can begin to sow seeds into your subconscious to begin to rewire it is by subscribing to the Bloom Beyond YouTube channel and the Bloom Beyond podcast, as well as following along on the different channels that we have to spread our message and the seeds. And when you then harvest those seeds and sow them into your subconscious, you set yourself up to be able to be more prepared to potentially join the free tribe. Now, let's go ahead and apply to join the Bloom Beyond WhatsApp group and garden. Go to bloombeyond.com/apply. Let's bloom beyond.